Michael, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
How did you get into theater?
Oh my goodness. I've considered myself a song and dance man all my life. I've always loved the idea of theater, particularly musical theater, from before I can remember. I grew up on a steady diet of Broadway show tunes, big band and classical, and went into the theater program at the High School for Performing and Visual Arts.
Yes.
And have been acting all my life in one format or another.
So does it come from your mom's side, dad's side, or both?
Both, really. My mother was more formally playing the Broadway show tunes and talking about the shows. Right. My dad was a wonderful boogie piano player who played, when he was a teenager, played piano at a silent movie house.
Wow.
And his brother studied tap briefly. And
so that's in Houston or someplace else?
This was in Baytown.
Baytown, okay.
And Dad had a wonderful punny sense of humor. So I often refer to myself through him as the end of vaudeville, the last one, because of just the terrible, wonderful jokes. Yeah. But he had a natural performer's quality about him, though he never performed on stage.
Really?
Yeah. No, he didn't. But he had kind of that air about him.
Right.
So.
And when did he give that up?
Oh, he played piano up until he died. He was still just enjoyed doing it, and he just had a style about him that I think influenced me a lot.
Yeah,
I hadn't, until you asked that, I really hadn't thought of him as being more theatrical, because my mother was always one more introducing me to shows and Broadway musicals and things like that. But I think maybe the theatricality came a little more from him.
So did he have like musician friends come over and they jam?
No. That would have been nice. We had a piano all while I was growing up.
Yeah.
My sister took piano lessons. I took them briefly. Was not nearly disciplined enough to go through with him, but he just always played. He called it noodling around.
Right.
And but he could play a mean boogie piano. I could never quite get my left hand to go off on its own and do that beat, but he was great.
So he's good at improvising? Or like if somebody came up with you and he didn't know it, he could probably just get right in there, right? No problem.
He would pick stuff up.
Oh, what a gift. What a gift.
That's what I started doing, is playing by ear. I'm at the point with, I can play from sheet music, but it's kind of like if you're not fluent in a foreign language, you're translating in your head instead of just reading it. So,
exactly.
But if I hear it and get the chord progression in my head, I can sort of pick it out.
Right. And your mom, you said she played
piano
like
as well, and she had a beautiful voice. Yeah. She sang in choir, and she did some little theater when she was young back in Virginia.
Right.
And sang with a couple of choirs, and then later in life with a group that went around to nursing homes and performed. So I got a lot of it from her that I recognize.
You recognize this train too?
I do.
How many performances? How many trains are we getting this time?
Yes, as I've always said, it kind of limits you. You can't do restoration drama. All your plays have to be, no earlier than, say, the mid-1800s.
That's a steam engine. Trust me, it's a steam engine.
Exactly. Well, it worked well for music, man, because you've got the train at the beginning.
Out of the West was one.
Yes, exactly. That would make a fun musical.
Time the train coming through. Anyway, so you said from Virginia, right?
Yes.
So how did she end up in Texas?
Married my father. He came back from World War II, and he had been over there and wanted to know why. So that's sort of the person he was. He very curious person, very studious person. So he was. Went to work for the U.S. State Department and the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and she lived in Arlington and worked in D.C., so he worked in D.C., and they went to the same bus stop to go into town, and that's how they met.
Kismet.
Yep.
Well, back to the train. Is that HPAV? What is that?
HSPV.
HSPV. Okay.
The High School for Performing.
So that's been
and
around a
Visual
while
Arts.
then. It's not.
It
a new
has.
thing.
It was the first magnet school in Houston. It was back in the early '70s, and it was. A lot of people don't realize what a big gamble that school was.
When they first came out, yeah.
Yes, Ruth Denny had a vision. A number of other people in the arts in Houston, in education, had a vision to approach the arts with a vocational school, like you would have any other vocational school, because to do the arts properly, you need to look at it not only as artistic expression, but in all areas as a vocation.
Right.
And getting people to take it seriously, back in those days, much less given funding and a campus and things like that, was a big uphill battle. And we always had the sort of Damocles over our heads in the first couple of years.
I mean, this is Texas. We're big into sports.
Exactly.
We'll spend $60 million on a stadium. That's all right. But the arts,
Absolutely.
come on.
Absolutely.
Amazing.
But there was a lot of support for it, and we squeaked through the first several years and got established, and people realized that, okay, yes, they do take their academics seriously. They send out professional kids, and it's done quite well. I'm very proud to be an alumnus. And it was wonderful when I was being in Chicago over at the Owen last year. There was a girl, one of our murderesses, was HSPVA from many years after I was there, but it was a wonderful connection to have both of us there. And
they have a great reputation. Absolutely.
Well deserved.
Well deserved. So after high school, what did you do?
I went to a little while to Sam Houston State, and then came back to Houston at University of St. Thomas, and ended up working for a venue that did private parties, special events, and festivals. Called Garden Heights. It was a wonderful, wonderful venue. We did all kinds of great stuff, big St. Patrick's Festival, Oktoberfest, all kinds of things. But the nature of that business kept me from really being able to commit and say, I'll be available evenings, weekends, to commit to a rehearsal run. And through that job and some other work pressures, all of a sudden I looked up and it was like 20 years since I'd been on stage. Now I'm in a traditional Irish band, so I performed throughout that period, but just not on stage as an actor. Right. And I missed it terribly, terribly, all while I wasn't doing it, and just always thought of myself, even over that long period of I'm just between shows. And strangely enough, how I got in with theater in Conroe is I had been involved through Sam Houston back in '77 with the Texas Renaissance Festival.
It was very different in the '70s. Very different in the '70s.
With the drama department there. And then when we were doing the Celtic festivals and the St. Patrick's Festival at Garden Heights in the mid-'90s, there was a whole other generation of the Renfest people that came to those. And when Facebook came along, my business partner said, "You've got to get your Irish band on Facebook." I said, No, I don't. So he said, "Well, I'll set it up for you." So he went around befriending everybody in Celtic music and related things. So I have this multi-generational Renaissance Festival attachment, and I saw about auditions for Dirty Rotten Scoundrels up here, and the name Jeffrey S. Lane. Now, I had been out of theater for so long, I did not know that they did a Broadway production of a musical of Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, and I have a friend who was involved with the Renaissance Festival in the drama department in Houston named Jeff Lane, and it seemed like the kind of thing he would be involved in, writing a musical on that. So I thought, well, Jeff's doing a musical, you know what, I'll get back into an audition. I came up, found out he had nothing to do with it. By that time I was cast, I thought, well, okay. And I did it, and I had a wonderful time, met a lot of great people.
Absolutely.
I worked for the first time with Travis Bryant was the director, and Jeff Baldwin played the lead. And I had known them briefly back at Renaissance Festival back in the day, but the first time I had really worked with them. And then I saw a couple of years later that Jeff was going to be directing production of Chicago.
Yes,
Chicago came out when I was at HSPBA, and it's a show.
Wow.
Yes, I immediately fell in love with. I immediately fell in love with the role of Billy Flynn. I said, I've got to audition for this.
Right.
And I was fortunate enough to be given the role by Jeff, and he took a chance on me in a lead. I hadn't done a lead in a long time. And it was just an outstanding production.
Amazing. That's amazing.
Loved it. Everybody involved, the quality of it. It was one of those magical theatrical experiences that, fortunately, you're aware of at the time.
Yes.
While we were in rehearsals for that, I heard about auditions for Music Man here.
Yes.
In the Crighton. I had worked 2 shows in the Owen. I hadn't worked at the Crighton. And I loved the Crighton because it's beautiful old theater. But I hadn't worked it, and I heard about auditions. So I said, well, Music Man, I've always wanted to do Music Man. It's still up in Conway, so it's another 45 minutes.
Because you don't live up there. You don't live up there.
I don't.
I mean, Houston is blessed with a lot of places to do theater, professional and or.
I haven't looked at any of them for 20 years.
There's at least 20 or 30 of them, and they come and go and stuff like that. So it's like, why Conroe? You could have 45 plus minutes.
I keep hearing about shows, so I'm up here working on Music Man, and that's when I see you guys are doing
My Fair Lady.
My Fair Lady, which is another dream show from my youth. So I said, okay,
it happens to be in Conroe,
which happens to be in Conroe, so I'll audition for that. And Manny gave me Higgins, which that's the
you were awesome.
Dream role.
Awesome,
Thank you very much.
But it's not because we talked about it. I mean, our stage manager. I mean, she's down from the Houston, the medical center area, and would come up every day. We have people. We used to have a customer that would come from Katy.
Oh my gosh.
We've got people that would from the north side of Huntsville would come down here.
Right.
College Station, Wizard of Oz, from College Station to come here. I don't get it, but it is amazing how far people will go for roles. And I don't mean not just, but anywhere. It's just amazing how far people go.
It's a wonderful community, and if you have an opportunity to be in a show you love, and particularly playing a role you love, no distance is too great. And to do it with good people that believe in what they're doing and understand and believe in the role of community theater as, there are places and people who look down on it.
Oh,
it's
yes,
not professional
absolutely.
theater. It's, it's the best you can do. You're not going to be a star, but it is so important to maintaining the concept of live theater.
Yeah. It's amazing. There were so many people that thought you guys were a touring show. They said, they asked us, like, where are you going next? And Carolyn would say, I'm going home. That's not what they meant.
I did hear that once, and of course
that's a nice kudos, obviously, to the show.
Yes,
but
yes.
Let's go back to the life of the role of community theater in a community. Forget whether it's paid or unpaid or stuff like that. We tell people, especially, you know it, you get it, but there are people sometimes when they come and their lives are changed by what they see on stage. And for us, it's a show, and we have a good time, hopefully. But it is amazing how there are some people when they come, their lives are changed. And to me, it's just amazing. It's awe-inspiring that it can do that.
It has a wonderful impact on them, and live theater is just entirely different. There's
yes, it is.
An energy and an exchange between the audience and the cast that doesn't exist in movies. I love movies. I love TV. Yeah. Yes. I'd be happy to be in either. But there's just they can't approach it with live theater, and particularly in musicals. Yes. And being that I consider myself an actor, but first and foremost as a song and dance man, which is an entirely different area, and there's a degree to which that only works on stage because there's a different type of willing suspension of disbelief where you're accepting you're all in the same room doing this, and it lends itself to the rather odd habit of people in musicals of suddenly breaking out into
song,
but it works because you've given yourself over to that sense of fantasy.
Yes.
And it just never works as well on film. As many
Yeah.
great film musicals as there have been,
It's not quite the
musicals
same.
are not the same as when they're on stage. And there's some marvelously talented people in community theater. And, I mean, movies and TV, there aren't any musicals being done. Okay, you just
Okay, there
had
was
La La Land,
Yeah,
and they did do
okay,
Chicago.
okay,
I think
yeah.
we did better.
Yeah.
But
It's not, it doesn't translate the same. You like Noises
No.
Up. You know, it's a wonderful play live, and they had great people in the film. It just didn't translate.
no, well, and particularly like in Noises Off, you have the ability to edit. You have the ability to
And you
change
need
it
that.
because so it doesn't. You aren't as impressed with the timing
Right.
of the thing.
Because all forced.
Exactly. With musicals, nobody's doing musicals. And even back in the heyday of musicals, how many musicals were being produced versus how many talented people are there?
Oh, my goodness,
and
yes.
either those people are not going to get to work, or they're going to need to work in other venues such as community theater. And turn it around for the audience. How many people are going to get a chance to go to Broadway?
Right. Especially now.
Exactly.
$500 a ticket. That's almost standard.
And that doesn't even get you there. So, but then the ability to see live theater and
Yes.
appreciate the magic that is, it fulfills just an amazing purpose in our culture that just can't be found anywhere else. The people that we had in Chicago and My Fair Lady that worked with and Music Man, it was just, any of those people could have gone to any professional theater, anywhere from Jones Hall to the Schubert. I'm dating myself. New York. Dating myself to the early 20th century. But whatever circumstances are not there, they're here. And that is of tremendous benefit for the audience to be able to see such talented people.
Absolutely.
I'm blessed to be back into it and working.
Well, we're glad to have you
like
back
that.
in the community. And like I said, it's a small community. Really, there are not that many actors in this area. And as you know, guys, we're always blessed too, you know, and the girls hate us for that. You know that, right? They hate us for that. I mean, how many people can, okay, line up, okay, you want, it's Eliza or nothing, right?
Exactly.
And it's just not this, you know, guys have so much more opportunities. Just sorry, but that's the way it is.
Well, yeah. And one more note about the audience that I will say is I have had people in community theater from everywhere disdain older audiences, talking about Blue Hairs, but I will tell you a lot of those people have seen a lot more live theater than the kids on stage have been in.
Oh, absolutely.
And they're an opinion to relish and listen to and cherish. And when people who have seen theater from the 1950s through to now tell you something about your performance, listen. And if you're giving something to them that was kind of has died out to a degree and has come back anywhere, it's a wonderful thing to be able to give to audiences like that and to receive from audiences like that.
Well, I mean, we're always fighting the multiple battles. I mean, our competition is the phone, right? Why should anybody come to a live performance when they can play on their phone or be wherever? You know, and that's not just for us, but a lot of places. You know, we're fighting that. Entertainment has become a lot more solitary. I mean, yes, we can watch a movie on Netflix, and I do enjoy that too, like everyone else. But that's not the same as going to a live show.
No, when you're in an audience of a really well done show with great performers, and you become sort of one organism reacting to the performers, and it is an enjoyable experience beyond the best thing you can see sitting there solitary. There's just nothing like that connection. And then getting it as an actor from the audience. As I said, having been out of it for a while, I'm a little rusty on things like responding to reaction time.
Right.
So there were things like, as funny as, to me, this scene 3 in My Fair Lady is, where Eliza comes to try to get lessons from Higgins. You know, it's a fun, funny scene, and was a fun, funny scene to rehearse. But playing with it with the audience and seeing what they responded to, and your immediate shift in emphasis in response to that is just something you don't get in anything else. And it is just wonderful for both audience and actor.
That endorphin rush.
Absolutely.
Like, I got to have more of this.
Absolutely.
I want to go back to this Irish band.
Okay.
How did you get into that?
The Fons et Origo of it is my sister, because she decided when she was a toddler that she wanted a brother named Michael. I don't know how that
she
got
wanted
into. She wanted a brother named Michael. So
are you saying that she named you?
She named me. And my mother had Irish heritage, and I was drawn to it. So having the Irish name, having the Irish heritage, and an appreciation of it. So it was just my sister's whim. If I hadn't been named Michael, who knows? And I'd always been drawn to it. And I started doing folk music, open mic nights years and years ago, and I'd always loved Irish music. And there was a guy who had an Irish band, and his singer was moving to Chicago. And he recruited me off the stage, literally. And so I started playing with him, and that's 20-some-odd years ago.
Wow.
I longer than that, because I joked some St. Patrick's Days ago, Kent, that a child who was conceived the first St. Patrick's Day we played together would be old enough to drink this St. Patrick's Day. So we have been at it for a while. And it's they're interacting with that and having a sort of Irish character there fulfilled some of that theatrical urge for me at the time, as opposed to just doing straight folk music, and your interaction is slightly different. And then we got very involved in the Irish community, and I've been emceeing the parade with Don McKenzie for years now. So that kept up some of the performance, but the traditional Irish music is something I've always loved.
Wow.
And have enjoyed playing for.
So how often do you do this in a year?
Not as much more as when we were younger. Kent's off working in Eagle Lake, and I'm tied up in ours, so we get busy in St. Patrick's Day, and we also do early Texas music, which is basically the same music, only dressed differently, because it was all music we brought over from the British Isles, so you just throw a different costume on the same songs. And so around Independence Day and St. Patrick's Day, we get busy, and we're not the every other weekend out at the pub till 3 in the morning playing for table scraps as we were once, which some of it I miss a lot, some of it I don't.
So how do you make your living? I mean, you don't just what do you do?
No, I promote and produce festivals, concerts, live music. My business partner, Bob Foldauer, and I, we have Turn 2 Productions. We started working together at the venue I mentioned earlier, where we had the Celtic Festivals, Garden in the Heights, which was a very popular place for years and years. And we worked together with the Westheimer Street Festival and a number of other events. We had the Homegrown Texas Jam. And we had a concert venue downtown for a while, Meridian, that we sold, and then started doing just independent production and promotion for different events. We did a Pearland Crawfish Festival for a couple of years until Pearland ran out of room to hold a crawfish festival.
So you make your life out of performance, which is that's a rare thing. I mean,
that was part of what helped me. It's a weird double-edged thing. Is that kind of work kept me out of theater, but it kept me involved in entertainment. So it sort of denied and fed that thing at the same time. Yes.
So for people that are trying to make their living in the performance space, whether it's performing, producing, whatever, what would you tell them? Especially starting out, because we have a lot of young folks out there, so they keep coming up. What would you tell them?
The biggest thing I would tell them is to first learn absolutely as much as you can about every aspect of it. And then whatever it is, learn the business of it. Because the minute, my favorite way to play music is on a porch, somebody's living room, as you mentioned earlier, sitting around jamming.
Right.
People usually don't pay you to do that.
Nope. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun.
Yes.
Great way to spend the time.
Same thing with acting. If you're sitting around with friends doing table reads, Great. Nobody's going to give you money. Now, of course, in community theater, there's a lot of that where they're not going to give you money.
Yeah, right.
But still, the minute you decide, I want someone to give me money so that I can buy groceries, then you have to say, you have to look at the business side of it. How does it make money? How do you market yourself? Right. And that's when you have to start talking to and listening to the people who actually buy the stuff. And people who hire actors, who hire singers, and find out what they're looking for. But as far as theater and performance, and even festivals and concerts, every end of it will not only teach you something valuable about your side of it, it will give you a way to earn a living.
Yes.
If you walk into a community theater and it maybe has enough budget to hire a few people and say, well, I just want to be the lead in shows, you might not be spending a lot of time there. But if you can do anything they need doing,
right,
then you can get on. Then you're there for the parts. Plus, if you know lighting, if you know sound, if you know makeup, it helps you on stage with how those things affect your performance.
Yes.
And everyone talks about it being a collaborative effort, and they tend to think about that more from the community side of that idea, and this familial and spiritual side of that idea, which are all very important and very true, but also from a structural and business side, it is very collaborative. And to do one job, it helps to know as much as possible about all the other jobs.
Yes.
And to make yourself available. So that's that would be my advice, is learn as much as you can about as much of it as you can. And everybody can be your teacher.
Excellent. How has the entertainment business changed over the last 20, 30 years?
There's been a corporatization of, for example, radio that I think has terribly hurt radio. Because, well,
in terms of homogeny, in a sense, like, all
yes,
kind of
you have clusters that
own
own a ton of stations as opposed to individual stations. Well, now you no longer have the competition at whatever level of friendliness there is between their promotion departments, for example. They're not being inventive and imaginative in coming up with promotions, because all they're doing is looking at the bottom line, the profit and loss statement, positioning every station as to, well, we may have to sell this off to some other cluster or whatever. They're not thinking of it in terms of being an organic part of the entertainment world of their community, and how they can be involved in events and promote, radio stations. You have KPFT, you have some of the local stations, but where else are local musicians going to get known? They're not going to. In live music, ever since all the MP3s and all the ways to get independent music, that has, in a very short time, killed the concept of the album.
Oh, yes.
So that has hurt in the ways in which performers are trying to make money. They don't have album sales anymore, so they want to make it all at concerts. So the price goes up, so fewer people can afford to go. So you have fewer live music venues. Unless you have a town that has live music organic to it, like Austin, it becomes more of a special occasion, high dollar thing to go see a show.
Yeah, well, it's almost become all or nothing. Because remember, even, I don't know how many years back, maybe it's probably been decades, but when they used to have regional theaters, and you could make a good living.
Yes.
But, you wouldn't be a great star. Maybe they don't know you in that area. But you could still make a living. I'm not saying you can't do that now. It just seems harder, though.
I will. One thing that's interesting about the way the internet has changed it is, at the same time, it's opened up a chance for performers to reach people they wouldn't otherwise reach. But of course, you have a million performers who've recognized that. So now,
how do you get above this dip? Be noticed, right?
And what I hope it will do, and it's going to take some systemic changes that are going to be hard for the industries to absorb and reorganize around, is reduce the overall price to where you don't have, okay, you're going to have somebody's backyard party or you're going to have a concert at the Toyota Center, and there's nothing in between. And that hurts the arts badly, to not have those smaller venues. Mm-hmm. And I'm hoping that the availability of that will change people's idea about what valuable entertainment is, to where they look at smaller theaters, little black box that's built into an old filling station or something, and say, okay, that can be valuable theater. It doesn't have to be Jones Hall. It doesn't have to be New York. So I'm optimistic from that front, but I've seen some things that have made it. On the one hand, I say you got to think about the business, but you have to think about the audience as well and go beyond the business. So it's not just about making money. It's about producing a good product that people can afford to see.
Yes.
And some areas of that have been hurt, but I'm hoping that'll improve. Democratization through the internet.
Sure. Absolutely.
Performance. And you also see it's you used to have a terrible spread between like film and television. Television was seen as very, lower tier entertainment as opposed to film. Well, with the giant blockbusters, you have Kevin Spacey doing a television show like House of Cards because Kevin Spacey can't film movie theaters. He's a brilliant actor.
Absolutely.
But us, distribution companies, studios aren't going to say, well, I'm going to get millions of dollars in ticket sales, and the theaters are going to get billions of dollars in popcorn sales if I put Kevin Spacey as the lead in the TV. So he's got to get different work. So they've moved into television, which has raised
the bar.
And raised the quality of television, and to where there's some just wonderful work being done there. And so I'm hoping that people seeing how many more performers out there will say, okay, these smaller theaters, these places, these people who aren't big stars are still very talented people. I'm going to go check them out. As long as you give them something that's affordable for people to go see. And the theaters in Conroe, they're not expensive.
Not compared to a lot of places in the Houston area. I've seen community theater tickets up to $40-$45. It's amazing. I was like, whoa.
Okay. Oh yeah, you're good. You're not Broadway, but.
No. I think we do need ways such that it's not mutually exclusive. You don't have to be all business. We can still respect the craft and do good work, maybe even imaginative, something interesting, but still keep that audience in mind, keep them engaged, keep them interested.
I look at things like when in my business, when we're talking about someone who's looking to hire us, say, to help them with a festival. One of the things I tell them, I go back to a friend of mine in college who was like the first big audiophile I knew, and I was asking him about brands and things to get for a stereo, and he said, it doesn't matter what your budget is, figure on half of it for your speakers. You can have the best turntable, the best stylus in the world. If you don't have good speakers, it doesn't matter. And vice versa, you can have genius speakers, and if you got a terrible little turntable, it doesn't matter. So I always tell people, you can have the best event in the world. If you haven't promoted it, if nobody knows about it, it doesn't do any good. And you can have the best promotion and ads everywhere, but if what you've advertised is a bad event, it won't matter. With theater, with anything in entertainment, you need quality work to bring in the people, to pay the bills, to keep the thing alive, but you also need to take care of the business to afford to have a place to present the quality work. So they do have to both work hand in hand. And one can't get in the way of the other.
Right. Well, you must see this now because I know a lot of towns, even Conroe, are trying to revitalize their downtown.
Mm-hmm.
And usually the way they decide to do that is, let's have a festival.
Mm-hmm.
You must see a lot of that.
I do.
We're like, we're Montgomery, we're Conroe, we're whatever, we want to have a festival for fill in the blank.
Right.
Can you help us?
Sure, absolutely. We will do everything from help people design it, what the theme of it is, to put together their entertainment, to creating their promotional plan and promoting it, to getting the fencing, the porta-johns, all the, the logistical
every little
things.
Detail, right?
We've been doing this for over 20 years, so we're used to what needs to happen that a lot of people don't think of. Oh, walkie-talkies, that would be helpful. And those kind of things. Or, as I said about the speakers analogy, some people may have a really good event going on, but they don't have the wherewithal to, buy ads in the Chronicle on a radio station. We can help them promote it within a reasonable budget.
Right.
And so, but I agree. That's actually a great way to get attention to a downtown area. And I like seeing that with these places. I think Conroe is a beautiful little town.
Like I said, we've got a long way to go. We're not a Grapevine, and I remember when Grapevine was nothing for downtown. And now when I go there, I don't even recognize the place. But they've really, Somerville, New Jersey. I didn't even know. It was like I passed there all the time, Route 206, and I'm like, man, they got a really a nice combination of different restaurants, and not just antique stores. You don't want just antique stores, but there are other things. You could either music shop, whatever. It was an interesting blend. Brenham's not bad too for downtown. So we have a long way. We have a long way to go here, definitely here.
The idea, what is going to keep people entertained for enough of a period of time that they're going to need one or two meals. So
we
like
to eat, right?
Want to stay and see a show or something like that. You can't just have all the same thing.
Right.
Grapevine, we played a heritage festival there, and they were building a museum into the old railroad depot where they have the scenic railroad up there. And this was, as I say, a Founders Heritage Festival thing, and it was in July. And the guy who was head of the project, who was restoring the depot and restoring that short bit of rail line they needed to connect them, thought, it would be a good idea to bring some rail drivers, the specialized sledgehammers that they used, and let people drive railroad spikes.
And charge them for that.
Well, I know he didn't charge him. He was happy to take a donation, but you'd be surprised how few people were interested in driving railroad spikes in Texas in July. But I had to, because I've spent my career singing these Irish immigrant songs about these guys who came over during the famine, worked the Union Pacific. Like, I've got to drive railroad spikes just to say I've done it. Yep. So, I greatly appreciate Grapevine for giving me the opportunity to, have that experience and be able to plug that reality into my performance.
Wow. So I guess because so many places are having these, and they seem like they're not going down. They seem like there's more and more of these type events.
It's wonderful.
Where do cities fall down when these events go off right? What is that right combination? Because again, there's so many heritage festivals now. Everybody wants to get in on the history, the money. Apparently there's big business in heritage festivals.
There is, and there's a lot for historical tourism.
Yes,
that is a big thing in Texas.
Yes,
so we have such a unique and rich history that covers such a big part of the state that people do come to look at it. And what can happen is you get a board of people who it is not their main job to do these events, so they donate what time to it they can, and they either look at it as a hobby when they're feeling good about it, or an intrusion on their time when they're resentful about it, and they're not focused on producing a good event, which is something that will entertain people, will attract people, that will say, why is this one different? What do you have fun and new that will get it written up, that will let people know what it is? And Is there simple things like, are you putting it in an area and have room for people to park? Is it easy to get around? Some people will get, or some communities will get too greedy and start trying to nickel and dime people. And, festivals cost money. You're going to expect to drop some money, and you should, because you're generally supporting good nonprofits. You're helping small artisans out. Right. So, it is a certain amount of investment, but you shouldn't feel robbed by the time you leave. Right. And some events will do that. And others just don't pay attention to the quality of what they're doing and what they're putting out for people. So it's something you have to give attention to every aspect of it to pull it off right. But I think every town has something to offer. And, there are too many people, they don't necessarily, how many people who live in the Conroe area actually work in downtown Conroe?
Not many.
Not many. But they, they'll work in Houston, they'll work in Spring, they'll work somewhere, and then they'll drive home and go have dinner, go to bed, watch Netflix, and they're not coming back into town. So even bringing the people in your area into downtown and constantly giving focus to it, as well as bringing people from outside or people from Houston who live in Houston and work in Houston and say, but I want to see, some smaller towns, see what they have to offer, and they generally have a lot to offer.
Yeah, amazing. What do you do to decompress?
Oh my gosh!
Get away from the entertainment, get away from the acting. Although I know you're starting to get back into it, but what do you do to decompress?
I'll play music or read or immerse myself in the news, or I'll watch other movies and shows and. To either just enjoy them for themselves or learn from the actors to see what they're doing. But
so favorite movies? What are your
favorite types of movies? Westerns and musicals.
Westerns?
Westerns and musicals, yes. And, of course, they don't make much of either of those anymore. I enjoy sci-fi stuff quite a lot. I think they're starting to, or started a while back, and are getting carried away with some of the CGI stuff to the point where you're going, okay, yeah, that's CGI, so it has no visceral impact on me. TV runs the gamut from comedy to sci-fi.
So when you're watching TV, are you just looking? Look, I burn a little time and before I go to sleep, or you binge watching a series? What is it that you do when you're watching
I'll
TV?
binge watch. My wife and son and I are good at that. We'll be behind in a series, and we'll get the DVDs and burn through the whole thing.
Isn't that great?
As long as you can keep away from spoilers. People can be very inconsiderate about those. But if you can keep away from that, then that's certainly her preferred way of watching it. And I enjoy watching a show that way, just burning through it. The Netflix, Amazon model is really great. Which, to me, when they first started developing cable TV back in the 70s, that was something I was looking forward to somewhere TV would go, because I would hate hearing about shows. Take Firefly. They didn't great show. They didn't have all this network didn't have a lot invested in it as far as caring about it. So they were bouncing it all over. And just to take the necessity of positioning a show on the weekly calendar and the evening calendar. What night is it on? What time is it on? It was huge. It was huge. And, kids today, they don't know about that. Okay, this time, Thursday was all these shows. Friday was all these shows.
That was a big deal.
Yeah, it was
to sit around with a family, Saturday night, CBS, right? 7 to 10 o'clock. We knew that entire series. Watch it all in the family and go to the Jeffersons, go to Mary Tyler Moore, the Bob Newhart show, Carol Burnett show, and you watch it as a family.
Absolutely. Or further back, Ed Sullivan on Sunday nights. And it was, but to get away from that is such an opportunity for the shows themselves, because as long as they have the speakers, as long as they get the word out about them, they have a chance to breathe. They have a chance for people to sit down and watch them and say, yes, this is good, this should continue, rather than, but it's opposite Cheers, I can't ever watch it, Right. And so I'll binge watch a lot. I will immerse in news. Oddly enough, I think it has to do with being Irish. The news and politics will make people crazy, and
yes,
and
it
to
does.
Me,
my goodness,
I have fun with it. I mean, it's.
What, you stand-up comic? What are you?
No, it's just it's endlessly fascinating to me, and it's certainly important to look at the human nature element of it, and to try to see it objectively and see things for the complexity that they have, and just marvel at the complexity of motivation, of why people do things, why systems are the way they are, rather than get caught up in one particular, I can't believe this happened. It's so fascinating to me that I actually get enjoyment out of it. I know that's perverse.
Well, that's interesting, because having done in the entertainment industry, you must have dealt with all different types of personalities over these years.
Yes.
Right? And you must have all your different tactics for how to deal with all these different people, to get them to do what you need to do to get to point A to point B. You've got to get, I got this festival, whatever I'm doing.
Well, yes, and also in our business, you cannot let, I mentioned the news, but politics particularly, and specifically, you can't let that get in the way. And it has gotten acute in a way that it never used to be on both sides. And years and years and years ago, you could know somebody for years, and unless you brought it up or specifically decided to discuss it, you may not know what their politics are about a given thing. And you may be or just the subject that on which you may agree or disagree may never have come up,
or you can agree to disagree, which is kind of interesting too.
Well, and it wasn't so, and there has been so much polarization and each issue gets thrown into different camps, rather than, certain people feel this way about this issue, this way about another issue, and you.
But we can find common ground on other things.
Yeah,
or whatever.
The Venn diagrams have changed.
Yeah, yes,
politics
definitely, yes.
quite a bit, and it comes up, and it's more acute and in ways more personal, and you just have to say, if either I'm going to severely restrict the number of people with whom I can do business. Or you have to find a way to, change the subject, or my preferred method just in general is speak very impersonally about the things, and as much as someone may be bringing something up with which you vehemently disagree, find the one thing on which you do to springboard off onto another subject, or just to say, we disagree about 90% about that. Well, let's talk about this 10% we do agree on. Let's spend our time here.
Absolutely.
And it's a trick, and I guess the observational skill that you have to develop to be a performer ties into it, to where you start seeing, these are their hot buttons. Let me get away from that. Or they're approaching my hot buttons. Let me get away from that. Because, why should I set myself up to become offended by something somebody says? Just get away from it. And
it's definitely a skill. I know the story, the famous one about how Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill, kind of opposite ends of the spectrum, right?
But they were both Irish.
See, they found something in common, and they did drink together. Yes. So maybe that's what it was. They just say, look, we can drink together.
Plus Irish culture, you can fight together and have a good time with it. That's why I say possibly, culturally part of how I enjoy the news and politics when it drives other people crazy is that's the enjoyment of fighting. But
oh my goodness.
Good to speak. But yes, they would figure out, they would see where they got along, because at the end of the day, and this is what I take from it, and it's true in theater and in the stereotypes can be anywhere from, because through Irish music, through early Texas music, I do a lot of historical reenactment, and you may assume that people that are involved in that have certain views,
right?
And then you get into theater, and from stereotype or from your typical experience, you may assume people have certain views, and either one of them is going to surprise you, and you'll find out, oh, they feel that way. Okay. But at the end of the day, your actual involvement in the things over which you're disagreeing and how much they affect the part of your lives that intersect is so minimal. Whereas the rest of your potential relationship with this person can be so large and enriching. Why on earth would you want to part brass rags from a person because of that small part of... And, I'm not talking about very deeply held convictions about strict things. I certainly appreciate that in people, but, if you're disagreeing about if you're disagreeing about how our schools should be run, why should you spend your lives at loggerheads with someone with whom you could have a wonderful relationship about the theater or about the rest of history, but why disagree on these other things? Or why get in be in an interview about wanting to work on somebody's festival with them and get into a fight with them over politics, and now you don't have the job, So it's not being truthful. It's just deciding what part of your life is going to control your interaction with people, and it can't be the part that leads to dispute. It has to be the part that affords you and the other person enjoyment and enrichment in learning from one another.
But those practice skills. You don't just come up with those naturally, automatically kind of thing. You have to practice them. And the fact that we do so much of our communication electronically has its own tone. It has its own thing, and you can be very impersonal. And you really have to work on it. You have to say, I'm going to work on this skill. I want to work so. If we work together, let's find the common ground. It's not just something that just pops up. There isn't a class that I know out there that you go take when you're in college or high school or whatever. And yet, it probably controls a lot of your life without realizing it.
Well, I mean, it's the way I was brought up to first be polite.
Right.
And even if I'm going to disagree with someone, I'm going to do so politely. Right. And I would do this deliberately on social media. There are people that I know, and I will see the way they will respond to people, whether they know them or not, and think, if you were sitting across the table from that person, you would never dream of saying something like that in that manner.
Not in their face.
No.
We'll do it in public. Essentially, that's what you do on Facebook, on Twitter, or whatever. That's essentially
exactly.
You're just doing it in public, just not to their face.
But if you just start, if your grounding principle is, be polite, don't offend anyone unnecessarily, and you can stand your ground without being vicious, without being careless, without being unkind, and for one thing that most people don't think about, that makes it more likely that the other person will actually listen to what you're saying.
Yes.
Whereas if you're confrontational, that gets their back up, so they're not going to listen to
You're
anything
done.
else you say.
That's it.
They're going to disagree with everything. But if you're polite, if you afford them as much as you can, because again, we're assuming you're disagreeing with them, but if you, to the extent of honesty you can, afford legitimacy to their point, they're more likely to listen to yours.
Sure.
And they're at the very least going to come away thinking in, a better position to interact with people so that everything's not always a confrontation. Oh, I can disagree with somebody and not fight about it. Wow, what a concept.
Yes. Oh, yes.
The devices, the social media have made it easier for people to be just unconscionably rude. I hate it.
And I don't know if that was it's just social media. I mean, there's something but even before Facebook and things like that were big, there's definitely been a lack of teaching of etiquette. And even we're in the South, and in the South, in general, it's even better than, say, if you go to the Northeast or something like that. You know, we used to still have, you know, we're trying to train us to say yes, sir, or yes, ma'am, you know, the kind of stuff. Trying to, and so those pleasantries do go a long way.
They do.
It's amazing. You know, some people think they're silly, but they actually go a long way.
No, they are not, because the first thing you're doing when you're obeying rules of etiquette and when you're being polite, I mean, look at the letters between Hamilton and Burr that led up to the meeting at the Bluff. I mean, it was still couched all very politely. But what you're doing there is you are recognizing the value and virtue and of a polite society in general, and you're a member of that. You may be disagreeing with an individual, but what you're doing is affording respect to the society.
And take it back to respect. I think that's probably respect. Let's show some respect to each other.
Exactly, exactly. And whether you disagree or not, and as vehemently as you do, at least have respect enough for society to say, I'm going to maintain civil discourse, even if I disagree, because I want to be part of a civil society. I don't want us all shouting at one another. There is a long range of disagreements you have from who has the best of whatever kind of dish in town to who you're voting for to whether you're going to employ pistols at dawn underneath the Bluff and Weehawken. You know, there's a whole range of it, but you know, up until you get to the point of drawing pistols,
let's hope it doesn't come to that.
Exactly,
because Texas, we're known for that, right?
But and I'm not recommending that. No, but respect goes a long way to avoiding that. Respect and politeness, and recognizing the value of a polite society. And theater is grand training ground for that. You learn how to gauge your interactions more in response to other people. I mean, people do it unconsciously all the time. In conversation, they will alter their responses, but you're not specifically working towards that the same way you are in theater.
Right.
Whereas you're saying, okay, they're going this way with this scene, I'll go with them, or I'll try to bring them a little further this way. Oh, the audience is responding to that, let me do that. So it teaches you to read response quickly. Being in the audience can have that too, because you feel a sense of that interaction and how it affects you. You may not break it down into specific steps to take or procedures the way an actor does, but you're aware of it as an audience. And again, it is a civil engagement. You become part of an audience. You react with actors. So it's a broader civil thing than just, okay, I'm sitting down staring at my phone. And it, I hope, adds to that awareness of civil society. So we try to do our part.
Let's talk about acting style.
Okay.
Do you have a particular style that you like, or that you have your own?
Look at what makes the character who he is, why he does what he does. You know, there's a certain amount of showmanship in the last couple of characters I've done. From certainly with Billy Flynn, because he's a con man, lawyer who gets by with telling tall tales rather than presenting evidence. So he's a showman, and he understands that, and he enjoys it. So he's certainly a different kind of lawyer than, say, if I were playing Atticus Finch.
Yes.
And Higgins, he's tricky to approach. And it's funny, I was talking to Kathleen Baker, who was in Chicago, and she was talking about having been killed in Chicago as and other things, and she's going to get a reputation. I said, well, I'm going to get a reputation for misogyny in comedy because I played, and I'm not. Billy Flynn, Charlie Cowell in Music Man, and Henry Higgins. And the next thing I'm going for here is going to be Horace Vandergelder in Hello Dolly singing "It Takes a Woman." And it's like, gee, women are going to run the
typecast.
Exactly. But of course, the fun challenge then is, how do you make this person interesting? Like, Billy Flynn, he's again, he's a showman, so you make him fun to watch.
Right.
If I had played Harold Hill, for example, he's a con man, but he has to be charming enough to bring people in. So it's, how do you make characters like that true to their nature, even if it's not necessarily the nicest nature, and yet make them interesting to watch?
Yes.
And looking, say, at Horace Vandergelder, I mean, it's very easy to play him as just, this stodgy women are just there to do the work. Well, then why does Dolly want to marry him? You can't just make it about him being a $500,000. So there's got to be something else too.
Right.
With Higgins was actually one of the toughest characters in a sense that I played because, looking at Higgins on paper, why would anybody want to have anything to do with this guy? The guy's kind of a jerk. And so finally what I focused on was, for one thing, his passion for the language, his passion for, or not passion for, but his insistence on his idea of equality, even though it was very flawed. He tells Eliza, it's not having the real secret, Eliza, is not having good manners or bad manners or any particular sort of manners, but having the same manner for all human souls. Right. My natural question to that is, okay, I agree, but why can't they be good manners toward all human souls? He thinks if he's equally rude, he's fine. Right. So he has a way to go. Right. But if you focus on that, plus the fact that it finally occurred to me that Higgins is having an immense amount of fun being Higgins. And being superior, and he sees the humor in everything that Eliza is frightened or horrified by. He's tossing off as a joke, and she hasn't gotten it. He doesn't understand she hasn't gotten the joke. He's just having immense fun, and so that gave me something to work with as far as what can you do to make him likable. Is that he's enjoying himself. And slightly larger than life, which is in and of itself attractive to people. So, without getting into cliches about the truth of the character and all that, it really is why is the character doing what they're doing, and how do they interact with the other characters, and how do you make them someone you want to sit in a seat and watch for 2-3 hours, because that's, you have to a certain degree be technical. You can't immerse yourself so in the character you forget the fact that, well, somebody's sitting there watching me. I've got to make it worth their while. It's no use to be true to the character to somebody who's asleep because you haven't made it interesting. On the other hand, you don't want to create this firebrand just for the sake of throwing fireworks off on stage if it has nothing to do with the character and it's not realistic in a way, in any sense. So,
and people get that. You don't have to be trained. There's just something about an audience. Like I said, we're back to the engagement. If we'll tell people that they know when it's real, they may not know why.
Right.
But they can tell, these people, there's some chemistry there. We couch it in these different words. There's some chemistry there. This person seemed real. They don't know why. But somehow, when you do that, you somehow created a character that resonates with them. Whether it's just entertaining or they can relate to it or whatever, but something. There's something. And they don't know it, but they do. And at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter because they're the ones paying.
Well, true.
They're paying to set that seat. So.
And, to stand up for my preferred part of theater, musical comedy, other people will look down on it as being cheap entertainment and fluff. But to me, you have to, just as if you were doing Shakespeare, just as if you were doing Ibsen, whoever. If you're doing Glengarry Glen Ross the musical, that would be interesting. You have to start with, it doesn't matter that this guy is going to break out in song and dance. You have to make him a believable character. You have to approach it as an actor first.
Yes.
The song, you have to look at the song as, I'm not here just to sing with what hopefully the audience will decide is a pleasant voice. This is part of acting this character. This is not a song, it's a soliloquy or dialogue, whatever. And I will see it happens more in musical and in comedy. People will go for the cheap laugh that isn't necessarily justified in the script or the character, but it's
just for the laugh.
That would be a funny thing.
Right.
And even if the audience laughs, which they will, sometimes nervously, particularly if it's risque or scatological humor, but still, part of their mind says, "Oh, they just that was a cheap laugh," and they don't engage as deeply. So even musical comedy, and you watch somebody like Travis played Alfred Doolittle, and Doolittle can be played as just a clown, or if you have an actor with the quality of Travis, and he's believable, whether he's being a buffoon or when he's doing the speech about middle-class morality. Even though it's a funny speech, it's genuine the way he's reading it.
And it needs to be,
It needs to be. And because you need to actually, as Higgins actually, thinks about, well, he's right. And to Higgins, it's a big joke to turn him over to the guy.
Yes.
But he also recognizes the truth of the whole middle-class morality. Yes. And the very odd but truthful thing, give me $5, I can blow $5, but if you give me 10, now I feel prudent about it. That actually makes sense if you think about it. And it has to be delivered right. And so then when, it's like Higgins tosses off the line some reference to, Mrs. Pierce will wallop Eliza with a broomstick. And at least the way I read it, looking at the script and how I wanted the audience to feel about Higgins, it was always a known empty threat.
Right.
Something like, my grandmother telling us she was going to skin us alive. You don't even think about it in terms of it actually being a threat. It's just saying, these are my words for I'm angry with you.
Right.
And because if you say he would actually strike her, that changes everything.
Right.
But when Travis had Doolittle say, give her a few licks with the strap, and the way Travis played that, you knew he'd actually hit Eliza in the past.
That's right.
And it kind of chilled you for a second, but unless you've played it, unless you've given the character that reality to ground him in, you don't believe that when he says it. And it doesn't chill you when he says it until, unless you hear it from a real character. If it's just a clown up until he says that line, it doesn't have the effect.
Right, and it could have been, like I said, purely for so-called comic effect, but because there is a reality, as many times as we've seen, and we know, I'm sure My Fair Lady from how many years ago, there's elements of whole discussion right there just on that line. If you want to think about it that way, which it was, that's the way it was played, as opposed to just for a laugh.
And audiences will appreciate that and give back to you. The more respect you have for them and for the material and for the characters, I mean, you can just get up there and wear the costumes and sing the songs, and they'll have a pleasant time.
Yes.
But to really draw them in and to impress them and to get them to saying the things that they were saying to us after this show, after Chicago, you have to invest that, whether you're doing a musical comedy or whether you're doing the heaviest drama. And that's how I approach it. It's sort of like, I will give it the same preparation and the same attention, and then it just depends on what the page tells you about the character. Then you have your whole lifetime of what you've seen to build it off of.
How do you memorize lines? Because you seem to have a great facility to memorize lines. You were off book like, I don't know how many weeks in.
Appreciate that.
And it was like, what? How do you do the whole thing? It's like, you know how many pages? It was like 120 pages. And most of it's yours. It's like, what the?
I wish I knew. I wish I could teach it. I wish I could bottle it.
Would you spend 45 minutes going back and forth going over lines?
I actually did.
Yes.
I actually did. And it surprised me because, as I said, Higgins is one of those dream roles. And this is...
But he's got a lot of lines.
Yeah. Touching back on the value of community theater, I mean, the odds of me, jaunting up a weekend in New York and getting cast as Higgins in a production of Broadway where else are you going to get the opportunity to play a role that you've loved since you were a kid? But community theater gives you those opportunities. And so, as thrilled as I was to get it, then after first read-through and rehearsal, I'm getting the script and I'm sitting down when I get home with the highlighter and turn the page, turn the page. Wait a minute.
I just pour paint on the whole thing.
I've got all the lines. And it was very intimidating. It really was. And
you know what? You were near perfect. Like I said, I'm mostly a techie. And we live and die by our cue lines and that script. And if it's messed up, we don't know where the heck we are.
And that's part of what you try to think about. You try to maintain improvisational shows are fun. But even back, going back into theater history to the Italian scenarios is you developed it to the point where you knew how to play off of one another. Yes. You knew what to expect. Everything wasn't just, gee, I wonder what they're going to say and when they're going to say it today.
Right.
But then people who are doing lights and sounds and can't operate that way. And honestly, I don't know how much of it was my existing familiarity with the show, but it was intimidating, particularly since Music Man, I didn't have nearly as much to do as Charlie Cowell. And second performance, at one point in the scene with Marion, I just went blank. And I had never done that before on stage. And it was like, why am I blank? And then to go into Higgins with that much more material, it was a little intimidating. But, however I did it, I wish I could tell you. But it's just going through, a lot of it's just reading and power reading. And trying to keep in mind the other actors' responses. Because Higgins doesn't have a lot of speeches. Right. So you don't have that, so everything, I say this, she says that, then I say this. Okay, so it's back and forth. So that helps too. Yeah. But it's just going through it and playing it a number of times. And I guess, a 45-minute drive helps.
When you're doing a performance, do you remember it all? Or are you in this zone?
It depends on what's going on. There are times when I'm able to, in a sense, observe what I'm doing and saying, I'm so happy to be doing what I'm doing right now. Right. Doing Chicago, doing this show. being able to look down. Other times you were just focused on how do I get from point A to point B.
Right.
Either, dance, move a song.
Right.
Whatever. Please let me hold the note the right amount of time and both
Right.
reach for the gun.
Right.
And it's weird. You have to be both immersed and self-aware at the same time, because you have to be self-aware to pay attention to the reaction and to gauge from it, and but you have to be immersed to make it believable and not be distracted.
Yeah.
And one of the most interesting and touching experiences was in our last performance of My Fair Lady. Is when you do final performances are weird, because you want to savor and appreciate. Okay, this is the last time I'm going to do this. But you don't want to get so wrapped up in that you get in your own way and start second guessing yourself. Okay, this has to be the most perfect, not because this audience deserves your best performance, but because this is the last time. And so you can easily trip yourself up if you take that too far. But you do kind of have that awareness, and it's usually when you're going into the scene. Right. Once you're in the scene, you're performing the scene, and that's pretty much all you're paying attention to. But when we had the fight that happens after the ball, I wasn't even thinking about really the scene in those terms. I was just playing the scene until it got to the point where Higgins says, where Eliza says, "What's to become of me?" And Higgins says, "Oh, that's what you're worried about. I don't suppose that you should bother about that. I don't suppose you'll have much trouble settling yourself someplace or other." And then his next line is, "Although I hadn't quite realized you were going away." And those words started coming out of my
Different
mouth.
meaning now.
And all of a sudden I'm thought, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. And of course he's not going anywhere emotionally. No. In the rest of that speech, he's talking about how, you're not bad looking. So there was nothing I could use in that speech. So I had to, I'll just bite the back of my teeth. And then, of course, Sarah got emotional, but she's emotional in the scene. So she can do it. And, the last lines yelling at each other were tough. But sometimes the awareness can trip you up if you're aware of the wrong thing at the wrong time.
It's about family. Your wife, and your kid, do they get into acting and singing? And
this is the funny thing. I met my wife in a production of Merchant of Venice. I was Lorenzo, she was Jessica.
Yeah.
And she had been in theater in school. She had been involved at the Renaissance Festival, some Shakespeare there. And we did some theater after that, and she's just a gorgeous woman and has great actress, beautiful voice. Sang in choir with us at the church and did musicals herself in high school, and just decided, I'm not an actor anymore. At a certain point after we got married,
why?
I don't know, and I don't even know how it works. My joke with her is that if the period I told you about that I was on accidental hiatus for 20 years, if that had lasted to my dying days, and I'm 90 whatever years old in the old folks' home, and the nurse says, "What do you do?" I would say, "I'm a song and dance man. I'm just between shows." 60 years between shows, but there's bound to be one out there. And how that works mentally, I don't know, because I can't imagine not thinking of myself as a song and dance man. But my son did a little drama club in junior high school, but it just didn't develop an interest in it. It would have been fun to do a lot more with Jane on stage. She would have been a Dynamite Mary, and I would have loved to have done Oklahoma with her. Yeah, but she's nope.
No.
Yeah.
So what does she like to do then?
She enjoys theater, music, film, television, stuff like that. She's not interested in producing it, but
So she didn't help out in your business?
Huh?
Because you're obviously in the entertainment business. She doesn't help you out with that, or that's not. She just has her
by
own thing that she
advice
does.
and tolerance. Really, is what I can say is, she is wonderfully tolerant and patient of me, but far more than I deserve. But no, she's a wonderful companion, great sense of humor, a lot of fun. It's been it will be 30 years married this year.
When is your anniversary?
April 4th.
April. So yeah, ours is in December. Yeah, 30 coming in December.
Yeah.
It's gone so fast. It's amazing.
It really is.
It
was just here. She was just coming down the aisle yesterday. I don't know how.
And that was 30 years.
Yeah. So we have a 24-year-old kid in between. How did that happen?
It's that in between show thing.
Exactly.
Do you like to travel?
I haven't had any opportunity to. I would love to. Very little, but used to travel a lot in Hill Country to Virginia to visit family some, and then we went up to New England, but not nearly as much.
Really?
I would love to.
Where would you go?
Ireland, definitely.
Yes.
Just to soak myself in the roots. One thing I would love to do if I ever had a chance to do the Grand Tour of Europe, because we met in Merchant of Venice, I would love to do a tour of Europe, start in Venice and go up to where Lorenzo and Jessica went, Genoa, and then just work north through Europe and end up in Ireland and then come back. That would be fun.
Hopefully when it quiets down.
A lot of things quiet down.
A lot of things quiet down. But Italy is such a wonderful place. And Venice, I guess especially, because it is this town on the water, essentially.
What news on the Rialto, yes.
Yeah, but it's amazing. Yeah, and even, I think it's the last time I've been there, it's been almost 10 years now. And even then, the locals don't live there. They can't afford to.
Yeah.
They work there, but that's it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And the only time you ever see them is either working or a festival. But they can't actually live there, which is sad.
It is. It is. Just amazing the history of that one-time city-state that just, and just the beautiful notion of it. Quite a bit more romantic at a distance than
I'm sure. Yes.
Of close like many things, but I would like to see it. I would love to see that, and many other places besides. But
and you think you need to arrange a festival there? That's what you need.
Yeah.
Arrange a festival there, then you can be there on business.
Do a crawfish festival in Venice. Yes. For a St. Patrick's Day festival in Switzerland. Patrick's Day festival. Give them something different, Yeah,
well, hey, maybe it'll work. Hey, as long as you got some food and and a good time, I'm sure they'll enjoy that. Well, hey, I think we had a great time here talking about that. We're going to ask you the question we've been asking everyone.
Okay.
If heaven exists, what do you want God to say when you get to the pearly gates?
Sure, you're supposed to be here. No.
And is he going to give you a certain look? Does he do it with an accent? Is it with the Irish accent?
Yeah. He's either Irish or Texan. One of the two. Maybe both. But I hope he invites me in to meet some people I've never met or haven't seen in a long time.
Really? Yeah.
And I hope he appreciates that I have a good time. That I had a good time here. There's so many people who don't, and so many reasons not to.
Yes.
But I make an effort to. And I hope that's appreciated by the guy who set it all up.
That is. Does he have a sense of humor?
Come on in. Oh, he'd have to. He'd have to. How could you create humans and not? Regardless of how you feel about, what point on, of creation he actually last had his hand. Yeah, how could you even allow for the possibility of humans and not have a sense of humor, And yeah, come on in. There are a lot of people you'd like to meet.
And who would you want to meet that you haven't seen in a long time?
Family. I often wonder, if in John it says, in my house are many mansions. When you're a little kid like your grandfather, you think of him as, grandfatherly, older guy fishing
Yeah.
with? Well, that may not be his vision of myself. Because, I think of myself and I think, well, I'm in my late teens, right?
Well, the mind always
Exactly.
is way back there, but our body
You
kind of
set
reminds us of
yourself-
other things.
But you set yourself somewhere, so you have to kind of afford people, oh, yeah, I guess that person that I always knew as being old wasn't always that way.
Right.
So
Like in Field of Dreams, the guy meets his
be
father, before he was aged.
yeah, be fun to go fishing with my grandfather when he was a teenager. Definitely meet family, talk to performers about things. Just think of the number of people you could jam with or do stage shows with. There are a lot of people I would like to just spend time with and enjoy their take on life. And that would be nice.
Michael, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.